Yeah, g'day guys. Today on the post-apocalyptic vehicle, we're going to get the fuel tank in, the fuel lines run, and we're going to make some exhaust system happening. So let's get into that. On today's video, we're going to do some fuel system. So here's the original tank out of the old Lancer, not the Hilux, but the Lancer body. Gary from AMC Restorations gave me a hand to pull it out because at the time we didn't know how much room we were going to have under there, and it could have been where we were cutting out half the floor to make all the driveline work. We took the tank out. It looks like, well, there's no floor cutting at this stage. And the motor and everything's in. What I'm going to do is see if it still actually fits. I think we're really close. I think it's just it might be a shocky mount or something. There is a little bit of damage on the old hose here when we removed it, so I'll have to try and order a new one of those because that's all perished and that's not very good at all. And like, I mean, that won't seal, because how nice would it be to use the original filler cap? That'll be awesome. So there's the actual filler pipe and everything. See if I can fit that in there. And the other thing that we got that come out of the original part of the car is the fuel line. Now there's 3 lines, go all the way up to the engine bay. One of them's an 8mm and then there's a 6mm. And I talked to Gary from AMC Restorations because he's the champion with the motor. And the carby will handle a 5/16 feed line, which is 8mm. So that's the feed line and that's the return, from what I understand. I think this is sort of like a pollution type return back into the, I don't know. Anyway, it won't be connected. It'll just have a little bung on it or something, because there's a breather, like an you know, that goes back up to the filler neck and everything, so that it won't pressurize or anything like that. And we don't have pollution stuff on this this build. And this little doodad is the fuel gauge. So there's a little plug and everything clipped straight on that. It's all under the body still. So what I'm going to do is quickly just take off these 5 bolts and make sure it's all okay in there, because it was a complete running car and the fuel that we tipped out of it was still good. So I think I've stuck it in the mower or something. But anyway, it's empty at the minute, and I had a rag and everything all jammed in, everything's taped up. So it should be fine, but I'm just going to take that off and make sure there's no gunk stuck to the bottom, and we should be fine. So anyway, back to the diameter of the line. The carburetor that I've got to go into it. Hang on, let me grab that out. Here's the carburetor, the original one off this size motor. Fuel line feed is 8mm or 5/16. So it'll certainly be no issue keeping up to the fuel volume for this. Now, it's not a modern carburetor, but it's certainly one that's going to do the job because it's an old school motor. So we need an old school carburetor. So this one's actually off of a 343. So it's a little bit smaller because this is a 360. AMC made a 343 and it's a 68 model. That's just what the dismantler had put it. There is a dismantler that is in New South Wales, if you're in Australia, that has all AMC parts for just about anything. We're running in this is a AMC 360. So most of the parts and so forth come from him. That's Steve Phipp on his Facebook page down below in the details, if you like. If there's any AMC parts that you need here in Australia, he'll be able to sort you out. Anyway, so back to the fuel system. I'm not going to put the carburetor on today because it needs to be rebuilt. I've got a carby kit for that. So we will dismantle that in a future video. But today we're going to get this fuel tank, the cover taken off, just to have a bit of a quick look-see and make sure everything's right. And then make sure it fits in there before I go to too much trouble. And put the old original fuel lines back in. I'm going to take the extra one off that's not needed because it was on all the pollution crap. So anyway, we'll get into that. Hopefully we can see a bit under there, but first of all I've got to take the old tail shaft out, which was in the previous video, link in the description. We should be able to just put it straight up there. It's not very heavy because there's no fuel at all in there. It's only pressed sheet metal, so I should be able to manhandle it myself and get it up in there and put a couple of bolts back in and we're away. It doesn't have straps or anything, so is just a bolt-on sort of unit, so it should be pretty easy. So we'll get into that, and once that's done, we'll start looking into some exhaust systems. Well, the exhaust system, because we got some bits to put in there. Anyway, let's get into this fuel. So she's all shiny as, no problem at all. Kind of expect that from a complete running car. So even the little filter, she's all tidy, very transparent. So the fuel that's been going into it's been pretty good. So the big one, the 8mm, is definitely the pickup. So I'll put all that back together. The reason I removed this cover to check out the internals before I decided to see if it fits in the car, mainly because if it fits in the car, I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to take it out again. I'll just put these bolts back in and we'll get it in there, eh? Here we go. So the other thing that I've got to go on is I'm going to put a longer hose on here, because that's the feed. It's the longest one with a little filter on the bottom. So I've got this fuel pump. It's only a little 12-volt clicker solenoid type pump, and you know, you just hook it up, a relay and a switch inside the cab. But I can screw this to the underside. This tank relied on the fuel pump that was on the motor. It was drawing it all the way to the front of the car, and it had just a manual lever type on the engine. Now I can get one for the 360, but I thought, well, these are pretty cheap, $10 Australian. I can put the link below if you like for this unit. It's only suitable for carbureted engines, so if you've got a more modern engine with fuel injection, it won't be any good. So the lines are 8mm, the in and out. So it's really simple. You just hook it in. So I'll screw it to the underside of the car. So just put a couple of screws in there and then run some wires up to the front of the car so I can turn it on, and then I'll forget to turn it on and wonder why the car doesn't run. So anyway, then it'll just be in, and then it'll be out, and then it'll go to that steel line. So I'll replace this hose with one that's a bit longer, and we'll see how we go, eh? Come on. It wants to come off, I know. There we go. There we go. Now we've got plenty of hose to do that pump relocate. In case you guys don't know, you should always use something that actually says fuel hose on it. Hang on, there we go. It says fuel hose. Like this one's just 5/16, and it actually tells you the pressure that you can run at, like 12 bar. So that is not for fuel injection, so just be mindful of that. I bought this years ago, and it's still good. It's not perished or anything, so always make sure it says fuel hose if you're going to put it in a fuel hose application, and always check that pressure. Let's get it under the car, eh? Here we go. Okay, now didn't work with the tail shaft in there, so I've unbolted it. I've just got to now knock it out of the way, and I'm doing it a little bit sketchier this time. I needed to get a little bit of height between the chassis and the body, so I've just jacked up the back half. Yeah, it's that simple. Just undo a couple of bolts. But what I've done is just unhook the brake lines at the front. The steering column will still be right. Just undid the front bolts, and just put the old hoist under there, so gives me heaps more room to get the fuel tank in there, and then I can lower the body down and see how close we are. So let's crawl back under there and see how it looks, eh? Here we go. Oh, there's heaps of room in there now. Why didn't I just think of that before? tank don't fit because of this crossbar. So, see, we've got about, I don't know, 30 to 40 mil, nearly 40 mil to go before it gets down into place. We're going to have to either raise those mounts and alter everything else on the vehicle, which I don't want to do, or we remove this bar which holds the two chassis rails together, which wouldn't be the end of the world because it's got a big brace across the back here. Or we try and squash the tank a bit in that, like it's on the very back end corner. So we're going to do the thing that makes the most sense and is probably the easiest thing to do for us, the safest, because, you know, on doing stuff, that's all we're about is safety. So we're just going to squash the tank and put it back in so it'll fit. So let's rip it out and get into that. Here we go. Yeah, sometimes I amaze myself on how sketchy I can do stuff. So this is probably the sketchiest thing I've done. Yeah, I'm going to squash it. Well, that little piece anyway. So I'll set you guys up on the tripod and hopefully I don't blow the freaking crap out of myself. So yeah, I got you there, didn't I? Yeah, you didn't think I was actually going to squash it, did you? Just to make it fit? Oh, yeah, I did. What else was I going to do? I had to squash it. There was no other way. Or make another fuel tank. So she's a bit dented. I did protect that thingy that was under there, that plastic extra breather thing for pollution and crap. Not that we needed it. I just didn't want the tank to leak. So the old blade gave it a good old crush there, and then I come back here and gave it another squish, and seemed to do the job. Bent these a little bit out of shape, but that don't matter as long as it bolts up, and if it doesn't, well, I'll make something that does make it bolt up. So let's get that back into the vehicle and see if we can drop the body right back down again. So here we go. Well, there you go. It's all back in. And there's tons of room on that side, heaps and heaps of room on that side. Yeah, it's really close. And if I can get the camera in there, you can actually see daylight in there. So, and the body is down. There's the bolt hole for the rear mount. So she's in, and I'd say that's a win, as sketchy as it is. Now, the rear bolts, mounting bolts, yeah, well, they sort of missed, but what I can do is just put big washers over them and that'll secure it well enough. Like the front bolts are in and done up, so if I just put big washers, plate washers, like heavy duty ones that pick up on those ones, they'll be fine. So I'd say we had a win. As sketchy as it was, we had a win. So now all I got to do is run the fuel line all the way along. I'll run it all the way along there, under there, and on the body itself, not the chassis or anything, because the brakes will run on the chassis, but the fuel lines run on the body because that's just the way it is. And then what? Oh, I've got to mount that fuel pump, so I'll do that. Then we can do something else. So anyway, let's get into those. Okay, so the fuel lines are done. Here's the, you can just see it there. I've just got to shape it up to follow the firewall. So that's the main feed. I will put a filter on that end, and down here is the return. So the fuel filter that I got comes out of here, goes in and has like a relief valve in it, like a 4-5 PSI relief valve, and then it'll come back down to it'll go back out that one, which goes back to the tank. So that's the return to the tank. So the carburetor won't be overfueling or flooding it or pushing past the little needle and seats and things like that kind of stuff. So I would say the fuel system's done and the body's back on properly. So now let's get into the exhaust systems. These are the standard manifolds that I've just taken off the motor, and this one doesn't look like it's been used in a long time. But anyway, so I'll just run a tap through these, and I've been to the muffler shop and got a few parts. So this is just a flange. Now that doesn't quite, the center hole fits perfectly. But the outer holes, I've just got to put a die grinder in to make the holes a little bit elongated. They're out about a quarter of a hole. So I've got those. I've got a couple of gaskets. I've got a 180-degree bend to make these sort of shape, because I think I need one at a bit over 50 degrees and the other one I need it a bit over 95 degrees. So once they're mounted onto the engine, and then it'll follow on top of the chassis there. Well, between the chassis and the body. So there'll be tons of room in there. So, I'll just run the tap in those. Now the other one, I've got a problem here with this one. It's had an issue in the past. This stud is okay. I've run a nut down it and it's pretty tidy. So, but this one here, someone's had a problem in the past. So I've got to re-drill it and drill down a bit deeper. So I'm going to drill a bit deeper into this one and then put one of these new studs in here. So I've got new studs for this one, so that'll be fine. This one will be okay, and I'll just drill in deeper and that stud will be plenty long enough to, it's only got to go through the thickness of that flange, so there's plenty of meat on there. So let's get into that, eh? There's a bit of mucking around with those, but once they're done I can bolt these manifolds just back on the side of the block, and then once I've tidied these holes up, we can just loosely bolt them onto the flanges there, the flanges onto the manifolds, and then work out how much of this cut, like one will be about here and the other one will be, you know, a bit more than 90. So, and this extra piece, I've got it flared out. So this is a 2-inch pipe, and this is out to about 55. It's been expanded out to about 55 on each end. So I can, with all the bits I can make up, I can add on these bits I've got outside. Hang on, I'll just show you. Stainless steel V8 system, like a full exhaust system from cat back. So I'll be able to use one of them, or probably two of them. So they're about 55 mil on the inside. So these are a metric version exhaust system. They come off SS Commodores and things like that. So the speed shop must have upgraded, and they said, oh yeah, we don't need these, so they were giving them away. So they just gave them to me. So I might take out the crossover, I'm not sure yet. So anyway, I'll bolt one of these into the vise and we'll start tidying up, eh? Okay, so this is the troublesome, you can sort of see right there, there's sort of part of a hole, but this is much bigger. The thread that's in there is much bigger, and it's just started, looks like it's starting to crack. And if you have a look at that, that's that, and this is the proper stud for it. So someone's tried to makeshift and they've put a thread in there because they've probably broken a stud. And if you have a look, there's sort of a hole. It's gone off on an angle. That's probably just to, the hole that's there has gone off on an angle because they had to drill out a stud, or would have had to have drilled out the original stud. Like this one's the other stud, and it don't look too bad, and I'm going to use it. I'm not going to try and remove it, but I've got to try and make this accept this stud. So I'm going to just tidy up that hole down the bottom there and see if I can get a tap into it. I've got a 3/8 UNC tap to try and drive down in there, which is this thread, and hopefully we can get something that works, something with a bit of strength in it, because it's going to have a fair bit of heat and all sorts. So yeah, it looks a little bit dodgy down there, but I've got a burr, and I'll try and tidy up, make it closer to the center so I can actually put an 8mm drill in there. You need an 8mm to give you a 3/8 or a 10mm tap hole. So let's do a bit of tidy up work and see what we can get done, eh? Here we go. Sort of like doing dentist work. Yeah, I think that'll work. I knew I should have been a dentist. So check this out. How neat is that hole? It's pretty close to the center. So I'll run the tap down there, and that should give us plenty of meat to bite onto as such. It's plenty deep enough for that little bit of thread, because that's all I want is that bit. Doesn't matter about that bit. I'll have plenty of thread left over, so that should be really good. It's pretty close to the center. It'll be right. All good. Doesn't want to come off. Okay, am I going to get that off? Hang on. Well, that one comes off. There we go. That's what I wanted. There we go. Perfect. Just not real straight. But that doesn't matter. So I've got the manifolds all back on. There's only one bolt on each end. There's one there and one at the far end. So the manifolds are sitting there. Now the tricky part is getting that 180 degree piece of pipe and make it sort of fit so it doesn't hit here. Like it's a bit hard to see. There is the that's the topper suspension arm. So we've only got about 80-90 mil of room to play. So I will start cutting and see how close we can get this one. The other one's got about 100 mil and it's a better angle. Hang on, I'll show you. It's a bit hard to see. There it is there. There's that flange that I just connected. Who put all that steering stuff in the way? Instead of coming straight down like the other one, it comes on nearly a 45, so that one won't be so hard and there's less things in the way. As such, like the suspension arm's way over here, so it's nowhere near it. So I'll start with the other side because it looks like the most difficult, although this has got this in the way, but that's fine. At the worst I could unbolt this and get it out of the way, but I don't really want to. Anyway, so let's cut the other side and see how we travel. Oh, who put that in the way? Oh, that's beautiful. That's exactly what I want. And it still gives me enough room there to get the nut off. Okay, let's tack that on, eh? That's the way, Jim. Just put it in the way. I'd say we got a good tack. Let's tack the other side. Whoops. Okay, so this is where we're at. Now that looks a little bit funny. I did double check it, and the angle and everything is right, except for a little bit of a gap in there. Like, you can't quite see it, but it's... Now I won't put a big ugly weld and then it'll be in the way. Like, if you have a look at this, if I do a weld all the way around, it'll get in the way of where the nut and the washer and everything's going to be. So I'll just put a little stitch on each side so it looks neat and tidy from there, and I'll just trim that bit off and I'll fully weld it on the inside so it's sealed. Same with here, I'll just cut this little piece off and then I'll weld it on the inside, and then just knock off any burrs, and it'll just be a couple little stitches on the outside so it'll look tidy from the outside, and it'll be nice and sealed. And then I'll just grind it off flat so there's nothing protruding, and then I'll be able to do it up with the old gaskets. Well, I won't actually do it up, it'll just be bolted on like it just was, because there's pieces here that we got to extend, which is that long piece there. I've got to cut it in half somewhere and join it on. So let's tidy that up and put a bit of weld on there. So here we go. Now we'll just weld it up around there and we're done. Okay, now I could probably leave these as they are, like the gasket and everything will seal really well, but I'd like to try and take off, oh that's hot, I'd like to try and take off that little, where the weld is. It's a bit hard to see with the light. So I might just put the die grinder in there and just tidy it up a little bit. Not that this thing's going to have any massive amount of performance, but it'd be kind of silly of me to restrict it. So I'll just tidy that up and make it flow a little bit better. So let's get into that, eh? Yeah, so I've bolted them back on now, and I'll take you over the bench and I'll show you the system that I'm going to use. Out of that stack, they're all pretty much the same. The only difference in them was a crossover was different from this one to another one, but like, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I will be able to use them as they are, like all together. But I will cut off all of these hanger brackets. Like they're rubber mount brackets are meant to be there. I may use them and put them like this way. Just depends on where the transmission mount and everything sort of fits underneath. So I'll need to cut these off like just here somewhere. So I can use that piece for something else with the clamp for another day, and the piece that I've got from the pipe shop, muffler shop, will be able to slip straight in there. and then we're away, because they're virtually the right width from the two parts. It should virtually line up with the extensions, you know, that long piece that I had just before that I needed to cut in half. So I'll cut off these hangers, because when I do the rear one, like, I won't be having these curls out this way, so I'll be cutting the pipe off here somewhere, I'm not sure yet, and maybe I'll put a tail piece on there, or as long as it just dumps to the ground. I don't, and that looks like silly if I had just turned it, like clocked it. That'd look really silly. But anyway, I'll work out what I'm going to do, because that's designed to go up over the diff, if you can imagine a normal exhaust system. So I'll cut those brackets off, and we'll try and fit it in and see where it sort of sits, and where I've got to rehang these somewhere, somehow. I'm thinking about just put one piece all the way across, piece of rod, and have one hanger in the middle. I'm hoping it's enough, or have a double hanger in the middle, rather than have two separate ones, and we'll start getting into place. So I've moved the Lancer forward a bit, so I've got a bit of room, because it's kind of like a massive big enema to jam up the back end there, because it goes between the body and like above the diff, and then sort of goes like up that way, and then above the transmission. There's tons of room, even above the tail shaft. Like, the rear one isn't in at the minute, as you can see. There's a big gap there. This big gap. I'm hoping that it's gonna not be an interference. We'll get into that. Here we go. Okay, so I need to cut this piece sort of in half. One side needs to be longer by 50 mil. Just confirm the other way. Let's see if I can do some magic. You guys ready for this? See if I can snap it right where the black line is. The black line's just sort of weakened it a bit. Hang on, here we go. Oh, that's pretty good. Nice and neat. Right on the line. Not much of a burr there. Getting good at this. We have big extensions. Looks like a bloody long exhaust system from here. And this bit just welds onto those little L pipes. I could make this joint here a bit of a slip joint, but I don't know if I want to. I'm just thinking about just welding it straight up. Try and see if I can get it into the car and see how it looks. Are you ready for this, Lancer? I'm going to give you some big pipes. There we go. Oh yeah. Somewhere, sort of like motorbike handle. That's kind of not so bad. Like, imagine it without that orange strap there. It kind of sticks out a bit too far. Anyway, we'll see where the other end joins up, eh? We'll hook all those other bits in and have a bit of a look-see. I'll take you under the car. Okay, so we've got it all. Kind of looks like it's meant to be there. It's really good, except for this bit, a bit close. But what I'll do is just so then we're plenty away from the tail shaft. So I didn't really want it pushed up against the body, so I'll have to have it away a little bit, but it should still be okay. So, if you have a look-see, this is the end that I just cut off, and there's where it's got to connect to, so I'll just grab the little extension bits and see how close we are. And then we're connected. So that sort of fits. Now I've just got to trim a bit the other end and we should be fine. Got them the right length. That'll just go right there, and a couple of tacks. So that one's all good. This one's Okay, see that there? So I'll just put a couple of tacks on that, and then I can actually pull it out and fully weld it, because I have to unbolt it off the manifolds and then be able to pull it out. So everything will be in alignment. I've got the pipes hanging from the back, as you saw me do before, with that little strap, and then I've got it run along and sitting on a bunch of blocks of wood on the old jack. So it's nice and high. It's probably, I know, a couple of inches, or maybe an inch from the floor, and then it goes on to connect to these other pipes, which slip in there perfectly. I love it when a plan comes together. Get the welder under here and tack a few things, and then we'll start pulling it back out again. So here we go. Okay, we got a snag. Now that I've welded it all up, well, I've tack welded it, tried to remove that and it kind of hits there without clearing that stud. So I'm going to have to get the grinder and cut that edge at the end of the stud off. There's always something in there. Anyway, so I'll cut that off and the rest should just pull out. I need a bigger shed. I'll just put a bit of weld around them and we're ready. At least I know it comes out in one piece. Yeah, not the best exhaust welder in the world. Well, I didn't do it with a TIG, and we're not trying to stack dimes or whatever those guys call it. So she's welded all the way around, which is really nice, and the welds aren't too bad, and they're going to seal. We won't look at these ones much. They're a little bit tricky because the angles, I had to kick them a bit, if you know what I mean, to get those angles right. It's kind of funny how one of the manifolds is different angle than the other one, but it's just the way it bolts on. Anyway, so that's all fully welded, and we can put it back into place and then try and work out some hangers. So and then we've got ourselves a functioning exhaust system. So let's just pop it back in. Did I say I needed a bigger shed? Okay, so I've been having a few issues trying to get it back into place, all welded up the front. So I've done I should have done this at the start, but I made it a little bit easier for myself. Hopefully you can see it. I've put a joiner in it. So I've only tacked this side of it. This side's all fully welded. So because we've got those two manifold flanges and they're different angles, it doesn't go up into place as easy. So I thought, well, if I just make one of them separately joined, it'll be so much easier. So they're just two of those flange plates that I had at the start for the manifold. I just didn't have to use the burr to elongate the hole, so they're just straight as they are. So this end's all welded and the other side's just tacked for the minute. So now I'm going to get into the hangers, so we'll get into that. Hang on, let's get under the car. Okay, so we're under the back of the car. Here's the dual exhaust, and these are the old parts off this exhaust system that I cut off, and this part is just a bit of rod that I welded to these pieces which come off the Toyota chassis. So, and it's just a normal exhaust rubber bracket. So I'm just going to utilize them, put them up there sort of like that, so it's square to the chassis, and I've got the other one as well, so I'll just put it on the other side and we'll be away. Hopefully that's going to be enough support. Normally these brackets are on the underside, but I wanted to try and keep it higher so there was less chance of it catching on anything in the scrub or whatever. Like, I mean, the diff's lower, you never know. But what I'm going to do is use this over the top, cut it to size, and give us some support to those there. I've ground off a little bit of the paint up here, so I'm just going to tack it all in place and then pull the rubbers out of the way and then put a bit of weld on it. Let's get into that. Okay, now I'll take the rubbers off and I can weld the top part, and I'm going to take the system out anyway to weld up that front piece. I'll do that. Here we go. I know there's a special tool for this, but I don't have it. Who needs a TIG welder? Nice. Well, that one's not. That one is. That one's heaps better. You see what I did with the a bit of rod going underneath, a little bit of support connected on there. So I thought that's going to be the easiest way to give these rods out on the end here as much support as it can, and it's got a little weld on the underside. Just before you guys comment on about the different sized tubing and so forth that I've made the whole exhaust system out of. Now, I think I explained before that this main system came out of an SS Commodore, has a couple little hot dogs there. Didn't have cats on it or anything like that. So I've just used it because it was given to me. So the main reason I'm using this is because I got it and I don't have to go and buy it. The only parts I had to buy was these pieces and those flanges. And the only reason I went from 2-inch was because that's what comes out of the exhaust manifold. Yeah, I know they're stocko exhaust manifolds, but that's the only thing that can really fit. That's why it goes from a Boronol log manifold to these flanges, which is 2-inch, down more 2-inch to another flange, and then it connects up to this system, which is about 2.5-inch. So the standard AMC motor vehicle, whether it be a Javelin or a Rambler or whatever, came out with standard manifolds, 2-inch exhaust system, but from factory it only came out as a single. So I'm actually helping it by making it a dual system. So this is not a performance engine by any means. It's a stocko, yes, 5.9 litres, but it's what I got, so that's what I'm using. And it'll be plenty for this motor to breathe. So if I wanted to go high performance, well, I probably wouldn't have gone with a stock motor, would I? So I've just finished welding that up and done that. And now I can put it all back together and use the hangers, because I've put a bit of weld under there. Under there I've welded those on a bit more secure. When these cool, I'll be able to put the rubbers in and everything like that. So when it's all cool, I'll be able to do that. So time for a brew. Actually, what I'm going to do while I'm waiting for those to cool, I'll cut these ends off. See where those two little Nico marks are? That's where it sits like a fairway under the car. It's sort of under here somewhere. Away from where the bumper's going to be. Like, here's the plastic bumper from the Lancer, and it's virtually straight down for the Hilux one. I've taken off the big heavy tow bar that was originally there, but I'm going to cut these back a little bit. I'm going to cut these back here somewhere and put a rear bumper all the way across, some sort of odd looking things, so hence why I'm going to have these cut back here a bit, and then I'm going to have them so they're dumped downwards. Haven't quite worked out how I'm going to do that, but I'll cut them off and we'll see where it looks. Here we go. Okay, we popped it all back in. Doesn't that look nice? A couple of pipes just hanging out the back there. That looks like it's sort of meant to be there. Oh, I think so anyway. Like, I mean, it looks kind of right. Anyway, I'm really happy with that. Twin system all the way. The supporting bracket there is all bolted on. And those other joints. The other joint there, it's all welded up and bolted in. Bolted up to the manifolds. And we have some clearance from the tail shaft. Like, there's the pipe, there's the top of the tail shaft. I don't know if we can see it real well. It's about 20-25 mil. I thought that was pretty good. So she's all sort of there. Now the tail shaft's not bolted into place, and neither are the manifolds. They're not bolted up tight. Actually, I haven't put any gaskets from the manifold to the head of the motor. And those flanges, they haven't got any gaskets, or they're not tight done up or anything, mainly because I've got to pull the tank out again. I think I showed at the start when I did the fuel, the hose is really perished and it's really hard, and it's split when we're trying to take it off. This piece is okay, and that'll reach. So I've got a new piece of hose coming, so when that turns up, when it arrives, I will drop the tank again, hook this in on the top of the tank, and then bolt it in for good. So that's done. So a bit of a hot one today, and everything's all done. Well, exhaust system's done, fuel tank's done, and we're gonna move on to the next thing. Anyway, so guys, if you really like this video, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.